Welcome to My Morning Cup, a podcast produced by Costa Media Advisors and brought to you by the generous support of the Tennessee Valley Authority. To learn more about TVA's impact on our community, follow TVA on Instagram at TVA and on Twitter X at TVA News. My Morning Cup, where we have interesting conversations with genuine people. I'm Mike Costa, your host. My guest this week is Kurt Ferris. Kurt is an attorney with Chambliss Bonner Stoffel, but just as importantly is an active member of the civic, charitable, and business communities. Kurt, before I ask you about the architecture of Columbus, Indiana, and why it's called the Athens of the Prairie, let me ask, what's in your morning cup?
I've listened to many of your podcasts. I anticipated the question. I buy whatever's on Publix, buy one, get one specials, as long as it's dark roast, but I can't appreciate all the Starbucks aficionado nuances.
You do that too. The way I shop at Publix, if it's 2 for $1, because in Tennessee, you can only buy one and it'll be half price.
Correct.
But in Florida, you got to buy 2.
That's right.
Or they're going to charge you the full boat.
I tell my kids I wake up Wednesday morning all excited for the new BOGO email.
I don't get the BOGO emails. I might ought to sign up for those. And next on shopping tips. So you like just black coffee, doesn't matter.
Correct. Maybe a shot of espresso if I'm going somewhere to meet someone. But just get up, pop in those Keurig pods.
There you go.
Bold.
You know, we started using an espresso machine. Have you tried that?
I have seen that. There's not enough liquid in that for me. But
yeah, they're pretty intense.
Yes.
But I drink decaf, so.
Oh, not me.
Yeah.
In fact, I've had 2 cups today, and I'll have about 5 before the day's over. So
oh, man.
Love coffee.
Well, glad you're here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's my pleasure. And the main reason was I've got to find out about the Athens of the Prairie.
Columbus, Indiana.
Yeah.
My father was in grad school at IU, 30 minutes away in Bloomington. But then when I was 1 year old, we moved to Columbus. And it's the headquarters for Cummins Engine Company, which makes it diesel engines. And there was a gentleman who's no longer alive now, but he was about 3rd generation. But his family started Cummins. And as far back as the 1950s, this man, he was described as a Renaissance man. He was on the cover of Esquire magazine. His name was J. Irwin Miller. And in addition to making diesel engines, he said he loved architecture. And so in this small town of 30,000 people, he said, if we need a public school building, a church, even if it wasn't his denomination, a new public library, he would pay for internationally renowned architects to do the design out of his pocket. So there's well over 30 structures. I'm not an architecture student, but I think if you study architecture in this country, you'll be familiar with Columbus. And so that's where I grew up. The other thing he did was when he recruited for Cummins Engine Company, he went to like Harvard and Stanford's MBA program. So again, in this small town, we had this influx of people. That was pretty neat. And then just this year, it was voted the safest city in America. So
really,
it was a cool place to grow up. I attended public high school there, public schools there. We didn't have any private schools.
What'd your dad do?
He was in manufacturing. He was sort of a troubleshooter for Fortune 500. He started at Cummins for 1 year, and then he switched to another Fortune 500 company. And
so he'd go in and fix things?
Right, including in the Orient. He spent a lot of time in the Orient running factories for them.
So was that something where your family moved to go like to the Orient, or he just traveled?
We got to spend a summer there one time, which was fun because back then in the 70s, if you send an American abroad, we had a 4-bedroom apartment in Hong Kong with live-in help. This was all paid for by his company. This wasn't us.
Yeah.
But there were some great travel opportunities.
How old were you when you did that?
It was interesting. I'm quite old now, but the Vietnam War was still going on, and they would send U.S. military people to Hong Kong for rest and recuperation, R&R. So my dad would be at work, and my mother was trying to cover the eyes of 3 little boys as we were walking down the street in Hong Kong with all these bars and things for the service.
All that R&R going on.
Yeah. I was in 6th grade back that summer.
Oh, that was an eye-opener for you.
Clearly. Still remember it.
Yeah. So you grew up in this little town in Indiana, and I've known you, gosh, I guess about 20 years now. I just always assumed you were from Tennessee. I don't know where I missed the Indiana.
I don't know. I love Indiana. I don't miss the cold, but I still have some tremendous friends there. I get back there regularly.
So what was it like growing up? You've got two brothers, right?
Correct. Oldest of three.
You're the oldest of three. So talk a little bit about growing up in Columbus.
Well, we were out in what was a country, but we were on this little lake. And, we had a lake in our backyard, and it got cold enough we could ice skate in the wintertime. We got to water ski in the summertime and swim. And then across the street, we literally had the woods. So, go build little cabins and stuff. But we were about 30 minutes from my high school. So we were out in the country. There was one McDonald's between us and town. But
yeah, that's a long commute to a high school, 30 minutes.
It was.
What did you and your brothers do for fun?
Well,
besides getting in trouble,
Hoosiers and basketball go together, you know. And it's funny, I still go back for high school reunions, and I had this guy. He said, because I've always been tall for my age. And like in 7th grade, I was 6'1", he's size 11, ginormous feet. And I had not grown into any coordination. And I never really got too far along, but I was like Ichabod Crane. This guy at the reunion said, "I regret telling you that you only made the team because you were tall." But I said, I'd forgotten about it. It's really okay. So lots of basketball. We love that. And like I said, water activities, swimming, but just playing in the woods.
Yeah.
I mean, we were always outside. We were talking about the other day because we had friends all around, and this is before you wore bicycle helmets, certainly no cell phones. And we just get on our 10-speed bike. The only instructions were be home by dark. You just take off and your parents would see you, at the end of the day.
Was the movie Hoosiers out? Was it Hoosiers? No, what was the Breaking Away, the biking movie?
That's funny because I went to a small liberal arts school in Indiana, up the road from Indiana University, where Breaking Away was filmed. That was slightly later, but I'm very familiar with that. That was a cool movie. But the movie Hoosiers was also cool because, back then you had 415 high schools, plus or minus, and they were all in the same division. There weren't any size brackets. So the little school from Milan, Indiana can win the whole state basketball championship.
And they did, cool. Didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, great movie. That was one of Gene Hackman's best.
Yeah, in fact, that movie was filmed at Hinkle Fieldhouse on the Butler University campus, which is where the Mocs just won the NIT recently.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
You talk about a historic basketball venue.
What a neat parallel, the small little school that gets in the tournament and beats all the bigger schools.
Yep.
It works for the Mocs too. Talk a little bit about your mom. You said she was really involved in the civic community.
She was. It was interesting. My father became a business CEO, but my mother was a music major. She died in 2020 from Alzheimer's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I literally used to say, I don't know who's smarter, my mom or my dad.
Yeah.
I mean, she is quite talented musically, but way back then, we were 50 miles from Indianapolis, and she was involved with the Indianapolis Symphony, when I was a little kid. And they were both quite involved in the arts and education, both on nonprofit boards and things. So it wasn't, she was a stay-at-home mom, but she was like a lot of the ladies in Chattanooga that run the town.
Right.
They may not have paying jobs, but they chair all the boards and run the boards. And so
they're basically working full time.
She was slightly ahead of her time, and then she moved to Knoxville and chaired the art museum up there.
So that was pretty much ingrained in you at a young age.
It set a good example, yes.
Yeah. What about summer jobs? So how did you stay busy? And were your parents saying, hey, you got to get out and make your own money? Or
it's funny. This is almost like going down memory lane with some of your conversation starters. So I was the oldest of three. How the firstborn, if you ever study birth order, I did exactly what I was told. Including you will have a summer job. So, before I could drive, there was a guy I knew that roofed houses. And so I was this scrawny little, 6'1", 145-pounder carrying bundles of shingles up on the rooftops. And
how old were you?
15.
Wow. They probably wouldn't let you do that today.
He was sort of doing it off the books. But that was hot. And I mowed yards before that. We were required to mow our own yard.
Yeah.
And, I would mow the neighbor's yards for $6 a yard.
Did you have a bevy of yards that you mowed? And
I had a few, like 3 or 4.
Would you, when you kind of aged out of that, would you pass that on to your brothers?
It wasn't that big of a no, and that's where it gets back to the firstborn. The brothers never quite got the summer job routine the way I did.
My 2 older brothers, insist my younger brother and I lived a different life than they lived.
Oh, yeah. And the other thing is, if you're age 12 and they make the firstborn wait till age 12, well, once he gets to do it, then the third 8-year-old, well, it's good enough for this one. He can do it too. So
yeah, that's where you go. This isn't fair. You didn't
exactly.
Let me stay up till 11.
We had those discussions. Yeah.
Talk about the lifeguard pool manager.
So this lake where we grew up, you got to understand, it's a town of 30,000. So when they say country club, this is not like a fancy country club in Chattanooga.
Right. It's not Chattanooga Golf.
No, it's sort of cinder block, but it did have a swimming pool. So, and my kids, I milk it for all it's worth. But when I was a senior in high school, I think I got a job at McDonald's at the end of the school year. I thought, well, that's all I've found so far. So it was part-time. I was still in school. And then fortunately, my friend's older brother hired me to be a lifeguard for $2.10 an hour. That was minimum wage. So after withholdings, I was making like $71 a week. And after 2 years, he moved on and I got promoted to pool manager. And you should never really have someone who's a member of the country club working there. It creates awkward situations. Mm-hmm. After about 3 years of being pool manager, I remember, and that was enough for me anyway, but this woman who was the head of the committee, she said, "Kurt, we think maybe you've become a little lax with your staff. So what if you didn't reapply for the 6th year?" So,
what a nice way to put it.
She was very polite. Pinky Beck, I believe, was her name.
So with your parents' influence and growing up in a small town, pretty idyllic, and you're living that life and working the jobs that you, what were those lessons you took out of those early jobs?
It was funny because there was a gentleman, as I mentioned, my dad had like 18 jobs in 16 years moving up to this one organization before he moved to Tennessee in a separate business. And I said, we were 30 minutes from town. And my friend's dad would always get home on the clock at like 5:25.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Dad, how come you never get home at 5:25? And he said, "You put in average hours and you can expect to get average results."
Oh, wow.
And that stuck with me since I was a little kid.
I bet.
So that was one lesson I learned.
Yeah.
My father grew up so poor. Like his dad died at age 5, and his mother sewed upholstery in a Chevrolet factory in Indianapolis, and she couldn't even afford to keep him all year. So he got involved in scouting, and he had some great mentors that looked out for him. But he just believed in the importance of hard work.
Well, it hit him at such a young age, no doubt.
Yeah.
Did you ever get involved in scouting?
No, not to a big extent. My mom was a what do you call it? Den leader.
Mother.
Cub Scouts. Yeah. I never made it to Scouts.
Well, I'm kind of in the same boat. I did the Cub Scouts, and I think I left as a weebelo when I didn't wear my uniform and didn't get a snack that day. So I said, I'll go somewhere else.
Cheetos, that's what we had.
Yeah, I think it was the Twinkies that got me more than anything else. So what's next? You get out of high school, you're the McDonald's manager, you go to the pool. Take me through your college years.
Okay. Well, there was a small liberal arts school in Indiana called DePaul. And a lot of people, if they're not familiar with it, which I understand they're not, confuse it with a larger Catholic university in Chicago called DePaul, which is P-A-U-L. Mm-hmm. This is P-A-U-W. But anyway, going back to my dad, he's like, well, liberal arts education is good, but then you need to plan on getting a graduate degree. And it's interesting because I might differ with him now on that subject, and I didn't encourage my kids to go liberal arts. But so anyway, went to DePaul, where coincidentally my mom had attended, and she was later on the board, speaking about my mom, and got out of there. And then I went on to get both an MBA and a law degree. So first I went into business after graduate school.
So you go to Vanderbilt for your MBA.
Correct.
And then Washington University in St. Louis for the law degree. Was there a particular reason you chose Washington University, or other than it's a great school?
No, there's not a particular reason. Actually, at that time, I wanted to get back to the Midwest.
Yeah. And you stayed in St. Louis then?
I did for a couple of years, yes.
Yeah. What'd you do?
My first job out of school was doing investment banking deals and raising capital for privately held businesses. And so if let's say Costa Media Advisors wasn't established quite enough, a few years ago to go get a bank loan, a traditional bank loan, we might help you raise higher risk. We called it venture capital back then, but didn't really have a tech component to it. So if you were a middle market sized company that didn't have a full-time in-house acquisition team, you could hire us to go look for target acquisitions.
And how long did you do that?
I did that for 2 years, and then I had an opportunity to go to Wall Street, a second opportunity. Because I looked at it right after school, didn't do it. But at the same time I was looking, my father had moved to Tennessee in the meantime. And he was running a business up near Knoxville. And he's like, would you come down here and help us figure out how to generate some liquidity, which we looked at many options, selling a minority stake, doing an ESOP, going public. And we chose to try and sell the business. So that brought me to Tennessee.
And what was the business?
It was hardwood flooring manufacturing, pre-wood or pre-finished hardwood flooring called Hartco.
Hartco?
Hartco, Hartco.
Hartco. One of the things you said when we were talking prior about that business, it was a family business, and your dad had a partner.
Yes.
Or partners.
One partner.
And the rule was, well, it's a family business, but none of the family can work in it.
Yes. So his partner had 6 children, and my dad had 3. So they just had a flat rule: no one may work at the family business. They made one exception. My brother dropped out of college for a while before he went back to Davidson and later got a law degree.
Yeah.
And my dad told his maintenance guy, he said, you give him the hardest, nastiest job we have. So he was out there weed eating and scraping paint in the hot sun and stuff.
And that's what got him back to law school.
He quickly went back to school.
Yeah, it'll do that.
That wasn't the son of boss SOB typical job you think of.
Yeah. Well, and getting to Knoxville, see, I always thought you were a native Tennessean, until a couple of years ago when you told me you grew up in Indiana. So you moved to Knoxville and you're helping your dad out. You sell the company?
Yes, we did. That went pretty well. And then the company we sold to was a conglomerate out of Chicago, and they were in an acquisition mode. And so they wanted to make more acquisitions. And I knew something about the hardwood flooring business and something about acquisitions. So I got hired when it was no longer a family business.
You could finally work there.
I was allowed to work there, but they didn't own it. It was one of those deals where they gave my dad a 3-year contract to continue running it.
Yeah.
Usually if you make it 1 year out of that, that's about the norm. He made it 2 out of the 3. They paid him on the 3rd year, but they're like, you don't need to come to work anymore. So
yeah, that's a long time when you give up what's your baby to someone else and they still expect you to run it, but run it the way they want to run it.
It was funny to watch. Well, that's exactly right, because I remember watching a conversation once, and his boss was literally, my dad was like 5'9", and his boss was a former Green Bay Packer. I can say this now, he's deceased, but he was like 6'3", and so my dad was always looking up at him. And they'd go to board meetings, and these people would call me back. They go, your dad was out in the hallway going belly button to belly button with, this guy, who shall go unnamed. And my dad would just say, we can do that if you want to. It's your company, but that's not how we got to the point that you paid what you did for us. And it was really good for us, but they had all these grandiose assumptions to justify the purchase, and they were impossible to meet.
Well, and your dad, I think, is probably unique in that pushback, because a lot of people, don't push back and say, look, this is how we got there, to where you would pay all this money for us, and you really need to think about that. I mean, was that how he was? Was that part of his personality?
Well, mind you, they had received the money for the stock at this point. So you can say a little, you have a little more freedom to say that. But yeah, that's sort of the way he was. He called it like it is, but he was a consummate gentleman.
Yeah. And I think that's the hard thing when people sell their business, is realizing that it's not their baby anymore.
No. Oh, he accepted that, but he differed on how to run the business, because the relationships with customers were really special. Yeah. And you don't go into Charlotte or Atlanta and put in double and triple distribution with people who have committed to you, because then they have no allegiance to you, and that's just ridiculous.
Yeah. What happens after it sells? You work for them for a couple of years, or?
Yeah, work for them for a couple of years, and then he and I we enjoyed working together. We had a really good relationship. You know, he's the best man in my wedding and all this stuff. So he's like, you want to look for some more things to invest in? I'm like,
yeah,
sure, that'd be fun, Dad. And we were dealing with some accountants in Chattanooga we always had. And we put the word out that we were looking for different things to maybe invest in. And somebody called and they said, I'm sure you don't want this, but there's this company in bankruptcy in Chattanooga. Just wanted to make you aware of it. And we weren't looking for turnaround situations. And there's really two parts there. So my dad said, yeah, I'd like to go into business with you. But he was out of his business. So literally we made an investment down here in Chattanooga. And I saw him 5 days, I think, professionally over the next 8 years. So he was out and I could always talk to him, but
what was the business?
he was retired. It's called Choo Choo Customs.
Was it custom van customization?
Yes.
Okay.
And I was a bachelor when we made the investment, and I thought these are the tackiest things going down the interstate.
But Choo Choo was huge, and here's how I know this. When I was in Memphis at the same time, I was selling television advertising, and one of my big clients was Memphis truck and van conversions. And Choo Choo, I think, was at least the statewide leader. It was the name everyone knew.
Well, it was national, and there were like 125 authorized converters out of Detroit.
Yeah.
And they were concentrated at the top. But it was top 10. And we got them back to top 10 in volume. But we didn't sell on price. Theirs were more high-end packages, so naturally not going to be the largest. But
yeah. And custom vans aren't something you see anymore.
no, the factories figured out that they could put televisions in there and put nice chairs and things like that. So
yeah, because that was a pretty good business for a while.
it was. And I mean, they sold the most of them in Ohio and Michigan. So if you're driving to Florida, how do you entertain your kids? You stick them in the back and pop in a VHS back at the time.
Well, and that's the parents who do that, but they also sold certain custom vans to a lot of single guys who cruise around town.
Yeah, I don't think ours were geared for those people. Those may have been custom jobs they did on their own.
Yeah.
I never saw a waterbed at Choo Choo Custom.
How long did that last?
Lasted from the end of 91 till 2000.
And then you sold it after that.
Correct.
I do want to go back to Knoxville real quick. How did you develop a relationship with Senator Baker?
Oh, that's one of the great stories of my family's life or my life. But this hardwood flooring business, my dad joined. Howard Baker's father had incorporated that business right after World War II. So his dad was a senator as well. And it was in Scott County, Tennessee, which is up by the Big South Fork. So my parents moved in this tiny town of Huntsville, Tennessee, where Senator Baker was born. Mm-hmm. And so we all went to the same Presbyterian church and stuff together. And there was another lawyer there, and there was a banker, and my dad was sort of the business person. But he created a whole lot of opportunities for me personally. You know, I've always been interested in politics, but as a 19-year-old, I mean, we were family friends. Senator Baker came to my rehearsal dinner with his wife. And I just say that, not to name drop at all, but he just had such a meaningful impact on me. I just looked up to him so much. But I got the internship in the U.S. Capitol when he was Senate Minority Leader at age 19.
Oh, that's a pretty heady time.
Went to New Hampshire when he campaigned for president, and that was a tough year because he had Ronald Reagan and George Bush and John Connally.
That's a big field, if I remember.
It was
that
a big
correctly.
field. And, yeah.
And I say this to a lot of people today. Tennessee always had the reputation for pragmatic problem solvers.
Oh, there's a chain of them. Yeah, you're right.
And
Lamar, was a
exactly
mentee of Howard's or senator. So.
And Howard Baker probably epitomized that more than anyone else.
Yeah, and it's that could be a whole podcast with an expert. Yeah, someone that knows a lot more than me. But the fact that Howard Baker would work across the aisle, which I respect, would get you run out of town now. Oh, yeah, you're crazy. It's bipartisanship is a terrible thing now, and it's really disturbs me.
Well, and that's part of the reason we're in the pickle that we're in is because people aren't reaching across the aisle. How big an influence was Senator Baker on you?
I guess just one other story I would share. We could go on, but and his wife was really special too, Joy Baker. Mm-hmm. They had a shower for my wife, and instead of bringing her something, she brings me a red toolbox loaded with tools. And, she's just always really nice. But when he went to the White House as chief of staff for Reagan, after it was all messed up there, and Nancy Reagan said, bring in Howard Baker, we got to clean this mess up. And Tom Griscom here locally obviously was right there in the White House, so he knows a lot more about this than I do. But he would send his deputy chief of staff, Senator Rakerwood, to the Western White House with Reagan. And then, like on Sunday afternoon, they'd call him and say, all right, we're getting on the plane to fly back to D.C., and he'd look at his watch. He'd go, okay, I got 2 hours, and I got to fly back to D.C. But he would come home to Huntsville to recharge his batteries, I think. Mm-hmm. And my dad and I would go over and just sit with him. So I was like in my 20s, listening to the chief of staff in the White House talk to my dad, and they let me be part of the conversation. Of course, I just listened. I couldn't add anything. But
what a great education, though.
It was exhilarating. It was really cool.
Did you meet Tom Griscom at that time?
I knew of Tom. Senator got out in 1984.
Yeah.
I think that was right about the year Tom was having his twins or his babies or something like that. So we didn't really overlap. I knew his predecessor, Ron McMahon.
Oh, I remember that name.
Yeah, it's another podcast in itself.
Yeah. So when you moved to Chattanooga, and I know Tom didn't come back until like the 90s, but did y'all make that connection right away?
We did immediately, yes.
So you're two of the Baker alums here in town.
Yeah, I'm more of just a fanboy, as they say, to use a vernacular. My internships were not paid.
Yeah, but I mean, what an experience.
Yeah, it was.
So you sell the Choo Choo Customs. What's next for you?
So then I get cancer.
Oh, well, there you go.
And
that'll keep you busy.
And that I was doing some turnaround consulting, because we bought one out of bankruptcy and we were able to make that profitable in a year. So I was in a group called Young Presidents Organization, YPO. And one of my YPO close friends was here in town, and they had a little division. Wasn't really little, but they're like, can you help us with this a little bit? So, I did some consulting, but then in the middle there.
And how old are you at this time?
41, 42.
Yeah. Young guy.
Well, relatively speaking. My kids are in second and fourth grade. That's how I remember.
I mean, that's.
So I just run a marathon and thought I was in great shape. But I go for my first physical in 10 years. And Dr. Jack McCauley, he says, there's something I want you to go get checked out. So, blue-eyed, fair-skinned, former lifeguard.
Yeah.
I go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you have aggressive melanoma. Long story short.
Was it something you noticed on yourself, or the doctor just when they were examining you?
No, I noticed it, but it was atypical. It didn't have any pigment. It was just like this little pink bump. Looked like the end of an eraser just popped out of the front of my shoulder.
Gotcha.
So that sort of began an 18-month journey, which included 3 surgeries and moved my lymph nodes, which means it can move throughout your system, and then it metastasized in my lung.
So your prognosis was not great, was it?
No, I went to MD Anderson because I had a really great doctor here. I had 2 great doctors. Dr. Charles Portera was a surgeon, and then Dr. Rob Hedrick. Can't say enough about those 2 guys. But Portera said, I want you to go to MD Anderson and get a second opinion. Then I started a clinical trial, and there really, at the time, I don't think there was not a cure for melanoma. So you start the trial, and that ultimately got halted because more people getting the medicine were dying than those getting the placebo. So,
oh wow,
I was getting the medicine. We find out later, and I'm still here. But when it came back the third time, the nurse at Vandy. Oh, so I was doing the trial at Vandy through MD Anderson, and she's like, "Okay, we think you've got 4 to 10 months to live."
You're in your 40s, and your kids are second, third grade.
Yeah,
I mean. How hard does that hit?
It hits hard.
Yeah.
But you can deal with it a lot better now,
Yeah.
But I remember when they first told me that, I'm like, well, the first thing I said to the dermatologist, well, I guess there goes more life insurance. That's the way my mind works. But then I joke. I don't really joke. It was true. For the next 3 weeks, I was probably the nicest, sweetest guy I'd ever been in my life. And I might not be here, But then I got used to the idea, and I'm sure I reverted to form. But it's a sobering experience, but I'm a really lucky guy 20 plus years later.
Yeah. So how did you finally beat it, for lack of a better term?
That's a hard subject. I usually don't talk about it. I'm a little hesitant, but the doctors said I only talk about it if somebody else gets it because I want them to know there's hope.
Yeah.
But prayer, basically,
I
lost track. My dad was like on AOL.com emailing all his fraternity brothers, please think about my son.
Absolutely.
And church was great. And because medically, there really is not a reason why I should be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously a life-changing event for you.
Makes you realize how fortunate you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's not an easy subject, and I appreciate you sharing that because it does, to a great degree, define who you are today.
It just makes you really appreciative. I was just talking to a close friend the other day. I said, every day we just think, and it's not just because of that, but, gratitude is like my overwhelming emotion. And my wife and I talk about it every day, I'd say.
It's interesting you bring up gratitude. That's the thing I've really tried to focus on most in the last 5 years in terms of my personal self. That when we start our careers, we're all, you got mileposts. I got to get here at this age. I got to get here at this age. And you really miss all those little things you got to be grateful for, and as I just turned 63, and you get to this stage of life and you go, shit, I'm a lucky guy.
Absolutely. Yeah. People on these podcasts are lucky people for the most part,
Yeah.
And there's just so many struggles. My wife's a judge, and what she sees in the courtroom every day, and if you ever want to get sobered up about how fortunate we are, just go observe that for one morning. And we just don't realize a stone's throw, from the convention center where Rotary meets, there's just so many people that aren't as fortunate as we are.
Yeah, the lives they live are not, number one, don't start with the advantages most of us have. The head start, and then just circumstances and where life takes you when you don't have that. It's tough. And so, learning gratitude, I think, regardless of where you are in your stage of life and what's happened to you, is a really important thing because, at least for me, it changed my attitude. It takes away the, oh, poor, pitiful me.
Oh, that again was part of the conversation we had the other day. Is that let's not compare ourselves, Let's think about how fortunate we are to most of the people around us.
I saw a definition for happiness, and I want to make sure I get it right because I like it a lot. It's happiness is quality of life minus envy.
Oh, I think that's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you sit and compare yourself, and it's just not fair, number one, because you're in different circumstances. And number two, you really don't know what that other person's experiencing, that you're seeing all the good stuff, but there's stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't do any social media, and I feel sorry for people, for these youth in particular. And you can study it. And again, I'm no expert, but, it doesn't help their mental health.
Oh, it's horrible.
Because people only post the good. But
No.
Obviously, that's well documented.
Yeah, absolutely. So you come out of this.
Yep.
And were you a Chambliss Bonner at this time? Or
no, shortly thereafter, I was good friends with a couple people there, and we were just having lunch one day. And what I did is I went to WashU in St. Louis, and I thought I was going to move to Chicago. So I took the Illinois bar exam, and that worked out. But then I go into business. And so you only get reciprocity to go into another state and get licensed if you've been using your law degree for the last 5 years.
Which you graduated with a law degree and hadn't used it yet.
Correct. I'd passed the bar, but then I went into business for 19 years.
Yeah.
So and these two guys at Chambliss Bonner, good friends, said, you've got a law degree. Would you think about joining the firm? And it intrigued me. It's like a bucket list item. Here you've got this thing hanging out there. Sort of like me, also want to get a pilot's license and break 100 in golf. And at least I ran the marathon part of my bucket list. But
I haven't done that one.
So took the Tennessee bar, and that worked out. And so then I joined Chambliss Bonner, correct.
This is a stupid question on the bar exam. Each state's bar exam is different.
Correct. The essay portion is, yes.
Because you got to know the laws of that state.
Right.
So is one state harder than another?
It's a 2-day test, and one day is 200 multiple choice questions. That's called the multi-state portion. Can't believe I'm remembering this. And so that would be about the same. But where they fudge it, in California and New York, I think typically have the highest or the lowest pass rates. Mm-hmm. What they say is that the bar examiners or people that grade the test, they don't want to get too many attorneys because that's competition. So it's sort of a sliding scale, and they have discretion when they're grading the essay portions.
So it's very subjective. There could
be a little bit of subjectivity in there. That's what they say.
And you pass both Illinois and Tennessee first try, you're boom, done.
Well, it might not have been that easy. If you pass it, they don't tell you by what margin you passed.
But does it matter?
It works out. No, it does not matter. It does not matter.
So you haven't used your law degree, you pass the Tennessee bar, and you end up at Chambliss Bonner doing what?
Well, and I used it a little. I just didn't practice law.
Yeah,
it was good background.
Absolutely.
There's a book out there, 100 things to do with a law degree besides practice law. So,
and there's a lot of people with law degrees who never ever practice law.
Correct. Yeah. I was primarily a corporate attorney there, just because of
your background,
being in business, and within that, there's so many nuances. Privately held companies or family businesses. It's a lot of stuff they don't teach in law school.
Yeah.
It's family relations and how do you deal with these 9 children, for example, or you build a great business, but none of your 3 kids want to take it over.
Yeah.
So there's just so many things. And then the other thing I've sort of gotten into is partners who suddenly can't get along after 20 years. Let's say there's a capital call during a downturn in 2008, and they need more money to keep their real estate ventures going, and one guy can't make it. So they have to get divorced after 20 years.
Yeah.
Unwrapping these things. I'm wondering, I'm asking myself, is it as difficult as a personal divorce? But it's not easy. And because they have emotions too.
Yeah.
So trying to unwind sticky situations like that.
I grew up in a family business, and
I've heard your interviews.
And I'm thinking back to an early partner my dad had, that it was almost a betrayal, of when he left. It was like, really, you're going out and doing this, and I knew nothing about it. We're partners.
Yeah.
Aren't we supposed to communicate?
Absolutely. Well, work husbands, and
yeah,
home husbands kind of thing.
So with your background in business and unwinding some family businesses and then getting into the legal portion of it, what is it you would tell those closely held family businesses that they need to do that they're not doing?
Almost each one of your questions could be the subject of an entire podcast with all these different experts around town to speak about that.
And maybe we need to do that.
We had one example where they were, well, the way I look at it is, what is your exit strategy? And so what would be really ideal would be if you run your business as if you want to try and sell it tomorrow. And so you want the books to be cleaner than clean. The opposite of that would be you have children in their teenage years who never darken the door of the business, but they're getting paid an amount just equal to what their tuition would be at one of our fancy private schools.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you don't want the IRS to find that. But 2, it just creates questions about how do you run your business.
Yeah.
And so, if you sort of look at it, and we've got some clients, some of our oldest, largest clients, and they are cleaner than clean. They're such a pleasure to do business with because their integrity is just off the charts. And it's such a pleasure to work with people like that, But I see why they're doing what they're doing, they're getting tax-free tuition payments, but you just have to sleep with yourself every night.
You got to have some moral compass.
I would say separate, one thing, don't commingle your personal and your business affairs.
You said something at the beginning of that answer of position your business like you're going to sell it tomorrow. That way it's always clean.
Yeah, because otherwise probably takes you 2 years to clean it up. And again, there's people here in town. I mean, I'm comfortable in what I'm saying, but there's people who know a lot more about what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wants to sell a business, call me and I'll send you to some advisors.
Yeah. How long have you been here now?
I've been in Chattanooga longer than anywhere else. I've been here since 1996, so 29 years.
What made you stay?
That is a great question, because I spent 8 years in Knoxville, and I commuted the first few years down here. But then I had 2 children, and I was coming down 3 days a week, and This is back before I had bifocals. I would literally spread the print edition of the Wall Street Journal out on my steering wheel as I went down I-75.
You were that guy.
I was that guy. But everybody said, so I guess when you sell your business, you're coming back to Knoxville. Because I still went back and my parents were there and everything. And we're like, no, we like it here. You know, my children been here since they were age 1 and 2. And there was so much for children to do.
Yeah.
It was just the right place for us.
What is it you like about the community? Because I know you're very active in the community in terms of you've chaired Pink and other things that you've been involved with. What is it that keeps you involved civically?
Well, and I was going to say also, you know, the thing about when VW came here and they said the intangibles became the tangibles, you know, we love to be outdoors.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. But what keeps me involved civically, I've really just never thought about not being involved civically. You know, it started pretty early. I was involved in some boards in Knoxville as well. And the role models that my parents created. But, you know, we're just really fortunate. It's funny because when we were selling the family business, my dad said, okay, but I need 2 days a week to do nonprofit stuff. So 2 out of 5 days, he was running around the state with board of regents and things like that. You know, and that's just sort of the perspective. And it's fun. It's fun to give back. I love it.
So you mentioned your wife is a judge. Do you care to tell us anything about, and you don't have to if you...
No. Her elected name is Christy Sell. She's otherwise known as Christy Ferris. We've known each other 16 years.
Yeah.
One of our law partners brought her around in 2006 when she was first running for office. And you mentioned I've just always loved politics. So I am not a litigator. I never go into court. But I just wanted to discuss politics, you know. Anyway, jump ahead 3 years, and we both find ourselves single, and which we weren't in 2006. And one of my law partners says, hey, you ought to get to know her better. And so we did, and we just celebrated a 13-year wedding anniversary last month. But
congratulations.
We have 4 children between us, ages 24 to 31.
Yeah.
And, you know, as you know, with children, you never quit being a parent.
Yeah.
We love to ride bikes, and we picked up pickleball, which you can see a smile on my face.
Yeah.
We love that as well. Absolutely, yeah. I think she's more of an addict.
And that's what happens. People are becoming addicts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I haven't played yet.
Fun crazy. Just don't run backwards. Too many people
popping Achilles
injure
tendon.
themselves. Yeah,
those kind of things. You mentioned one other thing. You always enjoyed politics. You're still pretty involved with politics, or is it more just observation?
No, it's a little more than observation. There was one time where I got a little bit close to thinking about running.
Yeah.
But didn't do that. You know, I lost the vote to be our fraternity president by 1 vote. And my roommate said, you never were, what did he say? You didn't pretend to like people you didn't like. And
that helps in politics.
Yeah. And, you know, some people refer to it as glad handing or backsliding. Yeah. And I'm just a little introverted.
Yeah.
But I like talking about it behind the scenes and stay somewhat involved.
Yeah. What's your outlet? And I got a couple more questions, but I wanted, before I get to the last one, I do want to, what's your outlook for Chattanooga? You've been here long enough. You've got an interest in politics. You know who's doing what. What's your outlook for the next 10 years?
Wish I had that crystal ball.
Yeah.
Public education probably is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just such a factor of what zip code are you born in. And we did a panel back in 2009 where Chip Baker, among others, I think that's who named me, each school board member named 2 citizens to go on this panel. And we looked at things, and there was a gentleman who was really high up in Unum, and he said, this wouldn't stand for one day in the private sector. You know, I think he wanted to throw things. He was frustrated. And it's just tough because county commission doesn't want to vote for a property tax increase. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think it's all money, but I don't doubt for a minute how hard all those people work, but I don't think we found the magic bullet yet, silver bullet. I just rotated off a board after 10 years in Nashville called Tennesseans for Student Success. And it was formed to advocate for Governor Haslam's education initiatives. And ironically, we're in a state with supermajority Senate and House, but we got majority of our money from Michael Bloomberg, a Democrat, here in Tennessee. We had money from the Walton family of Walmart, Bill Gates Foundation at one time. And we were advocating for accountability in charter schools to an extent. But it's just hard to move the meter. It's really tough. And, my father was involved he tried to do some things with public education with Lamar Alexander when he was governor. And this guy came up to him, a teacher, and he said, "Ross, we were doing it this way before you got here, and we'll be doing it this way after you leave." So it's just a tough nut.
Do you think that kind of goes back to the fact that we used to, particularly in Tennessee, have pragmatic problem solvers, and now we have more partisan politics, and particularly when you have a school board that is now a partisan election as opposed to a nonpartisan election.
I wish that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I think that's trouble.
Yeah, and the other thing, and we'll maybe get back to Chattanooga in 10 years, but the fact that you've got a couple metropolitan major centers, and then we're basically a rural state.
Yeah.
So, they don't want charter schools in Scott County, Tennessee, because they can't lose any public funding.
Yeah, and in terms of votes, you're going to have more rural votes than you
absolutely
than you will have urban votes.
Yeah, but Chattanooga, I still like the direction it's headed. Mm-hmm. I think crime is down. That's good.
Yep.
Although when you drive around downtown, we still have a homeless problem. I think Mayor Kelly's doing a great job. Are moving in the right direction. I mean, I think he's looking beyond today or tomorrow. So if they could address affordable housing, I don't think these issues are unique to Chattanooga. No. And there's a lot of places that are worse off than we are.
Yeah. Before I get to the last question, Kurt, I do want to remind listeners who makes all this possible. It's a thank you to the Tennessee Valley Authority for sponsoring My Morning Cup. Follow TVA on social media to learn more about its multifaceted mission of service. And visit TVA.com/do good here to explore exciting TVA career opportunities. All right, you've listened to the podcast. You know the last question, but I'll ask it to you anyway. What would you tell that 25-year-old Kurt Ferris is important for a happy life?
Be honest, do the right thing, never take anything for granted.
That's pretty succinct and simple.
I forgot what the question was going to be, so that just
Did you really?
I did not know what the question was going to be. I'm like, oh heck, I don't remember this one.
Be honest.
Do the right thing.
Do the right thing,
and be grateful.
Yeah, and we talked about gratitude, but the honesty and the do the right thing is so important. It's the old saying: there's no wrong way to do the right thing, or no right way to do the wrong thing either.
True.
Yeah, they both work out like that. Well, I enjoyed this. I appreciate you taking time, getting to know a little bit more about your background, and because, as I said when we started out, we've known each other a little more than 20 years now, but I really hadn't dug that deep. So I appreciate you taking time to come and do that.
Well, and if your listeners don't know, congratulations on being elected Rotary Club of Chattanooga president-elect.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's I'm excited about it. I love the Rotary Club, and I think it's probably the most consequential civic club in Chattanooga in terms of its history and its influence, and I think what you just said is important for a happy life applies to Rotary, because of the four-way test: do the right thing, be honest, express gratitude.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Kurt. Good to see you. Thanks for listening to My Morning Cup, a podcast by Costa Media Advisors. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. I release a new episode each week, so be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.